He thought I was just his wife. He forgot who I work for. He served me divorce papers in some cheap diner, telling his mistress I would beg him back. He didn't realize that to beg, I would have to come down from the top. The next papers he saw were served by the chief counsel of the most powerful man in Chicago. My name is Maya, and I was sitting in a circle of lukewarm hell. It was one of those 24-hour diners in the suburbs of Chicago, the kind of place that smells perpetually of burnt coffee and old grease. The air was heavy, sticking to my skin. My shoe made a faint peeling sound as I shifted my weight, unsticking itself from the laminate floor. Across the table, my husband, Julian, slid a thick stack of papers toward me. They caught on a patch of sticky syrup a previous customer had left behind. "Sign it," he said. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at his own reflection in the darkened window, admiring the cut of his new suit. He wore a smirk he must have practiced, all teeth and casual cruelty. I looked down at the papers. The cheap fluorescent lights overhead made the white staple blinding. The bold letters at the top screamed at me, "Petition for dissolution of marriage." Below that, the box for uncontested was checked. My stomach hollowed out. I scanned the terms, though I already knew what they would say. He got everything. The apartment in the city, his name. The car I drove every day, his name. The joint savings account I had been feeding for 5 years emptied, and now solely in his name. It was a clean, surgical extraction. He had left me nothing. I looked past his shoulder, through the glass streaked with cold, slanting rain. A new BMW was idling at the curb, its red taillights bleeding onto the wet asphalt. I could just make out the silhouette in the passenger seat. Simone, his junior colleague from the office, the one whose perfume lingered in our apartment. "Listen, Maya," Julian said, finally tearing his gaze from his reflection. He leaned forward, dropping his voice into that slow, patient tone he used when he thought I was being hysterical or stupid. It was deeply condescending. "Let's be realistic. You are just an administrative assistant. A good one. Sure, but that's all. You cannot survive without me. You just don't know how." He straightened his tie, a new silk one I did not buy. "I just landed the big promotion at Cygnus Solutions. Vice President. They are very impressed with my initiative." He paused, letting the silence stretch, savoring the moment. "And as part of that initiative," he continued, "I had to do some house cleaning. I went ahead and arranged for your termination at Ethelgard Dynamics this morning, effective immediately. Poor performance, I think, was the official reason." He actually believed it. He believed he had the power to walk into my world and have me fired. The sheer, blinding arrogance of it was almost impressive. Then he reached across the table, not for my hand, but for my purse. Before I could react, he'd unzipped it and pulled out my wallet. He calmly fished out the key to the apartment and the last joint credit card. He dangled the keys in front of my face. "You will not be needing these anymore," he said. He stood up, sliding out of the vinyl booth. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a single bill, and threw it onto the table. It landed in the syrup puddle next to the divorce papers. "Call a cab," he said. A $20 bill. I sat frozen. I watched him walk out. I watched him push through the diner's glass door, letting in a gust of cold, wet air that carried the smell of exhaust. I watched him jog to the BMW, lean down to the open window, and kiss Simone. It was not a small kiss. It was a deep, passionate, theatrical kiss, meant entirely for me to see. He got in, and the car sped off, disappearing into the rain. I was left alone. Homeless, according to the papers. Jobless, according to his smug announcement. Penniless, according to the $20 slowly soaking up pancake syrup. The only sounds were the clatter of silverware from the kitchen and the steady drumming of the rain against the glass. I stared at the $20 bill. Then I looked at the papers. "Administrative assistant," I whispered to the empty booth. Julian was a fool. He thought my job was just a job. He thought administrative assistant was a dead end. He never knew it was a title I chose, a shield. He had no idea that my real title, the one only 3 people in the world knew, was Keystone. I am Eris Thorne's special asset manager, and Julian, in his spectacular, small-minded greed, had just declared war on the most powerful and most private man in Chicago. I left the divorce papers and the $20 bill dissolving in the puddle of syrup. Stepping out of the diner was like walking into a cold, wet sheet. The rain had turned vicious, the wind driving it sideways. It was nearly 3 in the morning, an hour for ghosts and garbage trucks. And now, for me. As I turned my face away from the wind, my personal phone buzzed in my coat pocket. Not the burner, but the one Julian knew about. I pulled it out, my thumb already numb. The screen lit up, showing a notification from my work email. My Ethelgard work email. Subject notice of termination. I opened it. It was real. A formal, sterile letter from Human Resources, citing substandard performance and redundancy of role. Effective immediately. My access was already revoked. Julian did it. The arrogant son of a bitch actually did it. He had called some contact, some mid-level manager at Cygnus, who had called some friend in HR at Ethelgard, and a few whispers later, my poor performance was on the record. He had built a narrative. A chill, colder than the rain, went straight through me. This was not a simple, messy divorce. This was not just about Simone. This was an execution, a coordinated, deliberate attack to leave me with nothing. No husband, no home, no job, no money. They wanted to erase me, to make me a non-person. They wanted me to have no foundation from which to fight back. I walked. I did not huddle under the diner's small awning. I walked past the shuttered storefronts and the flickering streetlights, the rain plastering my hair to my skull. I felt the last remnants of the weak, accommodating woman Julian thought he had married being washed away with the grime of the street. What was left was something else, something cold and sharp. I reached a bus stop, its glass enclosure spiderwebbed with cracks. I sat on the metal bench, hidden in the deep shadows, well away from the streetlight. The rain drummed on the plastic roof. For 5 years, Julian had seen my bag as just a purse. He never noticed the reinforced stitching along the bottom lining, or the slight, unnatural weight. I pressed my fingers into a specific seam inside and pulled. A small, thin, graphite-colored phone fell into my palm. It was old tech by design, built for one purpose. It was my lifeline. It was the one thing in my life that Julian had never seen, never touched, and never even conceived of. My fingers were stiff, but they did not tremble. I powered it on. The screen glowed a faint, text-only green. I pressed a single number on speed dial and held the phone to my ear. It rang once. Vain. The voice was female, sharp, and utterly professional. There was no hello, no who is this. It was a voice that did not sleep. Diana, it's Maya. I was surprised by my own voice. It was clear. It was steady. The woman who had been humiliated in the diner was gone. This was the Keystone speaking. Activate Protocol Indigo. The line was silent for one long second. Not a second of confusion, but of processing, of switching tracks from a state of readiness to a state of war. Understood. Diana Vane, Chief Counsel and Private Advisor to Eris Thorne, replied. Her voice was as cold as the rain. En route, 10 minutes. Delete this call. The line clicked dead. I did not wait 10 minutes. I immediately pulled the back off the phone, snapped the SIM card in half with my fingernails, and pulled the battery. I stood up and walked to the curb, dropping the 3 separate pieces into a gurgling storm drain. They were gone in an E-R-A of seconds. I looked down the dark, empty street, in the direction Julian's new BMW had vanished. I could almost hear him laughing, bragging to Simone about how he had finally, definitively won. "You think you fired me?" I whispered to the storm. I thought of what I had just done. Protocol Indigo was not a rescue. It was not a call for a ride or a lawyer. It was the signal that a direct, high-level threat had been made against Eris Thorne himself, through his most trusted asset. It was the code to unleash the full, terrifying and invisible resources of Ethelgard dynamics. It was an order for a complete internal investigation and a systemic, overwhelming, retaliatory strike. Julian had not just ended a marriage. He had, in his breathtaking stupidity, targeted a god, and he had no idea he had just called down the thunder. I was at the bus stop for less than 10 minutes, but the cold had already seeped into my bones, a physical echo of the hollowness Julian had tried to leave me with. A car approached, moving with a silence that was unnatural. It was not a taxi. A jet-black Audi A8 so clean it reflected the wet, dark streets like a moving mirror, glided to the curb. It wore no license plates. The rear door opened. Diana Vane sat inside, a severe silhouette against the car's ambient lighting. She did not say hello or ask if I was all right. She simply extended her hand, holding a folded piece of dark gray fabric. "Put this on," she commanded. I slid into the plush leather seat. The door closed with a heavy, pressurized thud, sealing out the city noise. The fabric was a cashmere coat, thick and heavy. As I put it on, the warmth was immediate, a shield against the shock I had endured. Diana handed me a slim, matte black tablet. "Secure," she said. "You are already logged in." We did not drive toward any home I recognized. We moved toward the heart of downtown Chicago, pulling into a private, subterranean entrance beneath a skyscraper I had never noticed before. It was a monolith of pure black glass, 50 stories of anonymous, reflective power. There was no name, no logo, just the quiet hum of immense wealth. An elevator, activated by Diana's thumbprint, took us up at a speed that pressed me back into the railing. The doors opened not into a lobby, but directly into the sky. The penthouse was a fortress of glass and steel. It was less an office and more a strategic command center, minimalist to the point of being sterile. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around the entire space, offering a 360-degree view of the glittering city lights below. The only furniture was a massive, obsidian black conference table and 3 workstations that seemed to have risen from the polished stone floor. A man was standing by the window, his back to us, watching the flow of traffic 50 floors down. He was young, shockingly so, and dressed in a simple dark hoodie and jeans. He was the ghost in the machine, the man the world knew only from grainy photographs taken a decade ago, Eris Thorne. He spoke without turning, his voice quiet but carrying absolute authority in the vast, silent room. He dared to touch my keystone. Eris turned. His eyes were a pale, intense gray, and they scanned me, not for weakness, but for data. He accessed your server. He thought he could delete you. The humiliation of the greasy spoon felt a lifetime away. The woman who sat there, shivering, was not the woman standing in this room. I placed the secure tablet on the table. "It was him and Simone," I said, my voice as cold and clear as the glass surrounding us. "She's his mistress, a junior colleague. They both work for Cygnus Solutions. I do not think this was just a divorce. They were trying to steal something." Diana, already at one of the workstations, typed a rapid, silent series of commands. "He is correct," she confirmed, her gaze fixed on the screen. "They initiated a data transfer from your terminal 30 minutes before your termination email was sent. They accessed and copied Project Chimera." She finally looked at me, her expression grim. "That is why they fired you. They needed a scapegoat." "They were going to frame you as the spy." Eris Thorne watched me, waiting for my reaction. He was waiting for me to break. A sound bubbled up from my chest. It was not a sob. It was a laugh, short, cold, and entirely without humor. Chimera, I asked, walking closer to the window, looking down on the city that Julian thought I could not survive in. They copied Project Chimera. I turned back to them, and for the first time that night, I smiled. Good. Eris raised an eyebrow. I tapped the secure tablet Diana had handed me, pulling up a file structure that only I understood. Julian did not steal the project, I said. He stole the trap I set for it. Project Chimera, as they knew it, was not real. It was a honeypot, a sophisticated Trojan horse I had designed myself 6 months ago. It was a complex, beautiful, and utterly fake set of data, designed to mimic our most valuable research, but embedded deep within its code was a payload. The data is a virus, I explained. It lies dormant, invisible to any security scan, as long as it remains on our network. But the moment anyone tries to open that file on an external server like, say, the main server at Cygnus Solutions, it will not just self-destruct. It will activate. I looked at the tablet. Julian just brought a ticking time bomb into his new company, and when it goes off, it will give us everything. I didn't need to change. I just needed to stop pretending. The mask of the accommodating, simple wife I had worn for 5 years evaporated in the cold, clean light of the command center. I was just me. I was the keystone. All right, I said, my voice echoing slightly in the vast, silent room. Let's begin. I walked to the central workstation, the polished floor cold beneath my feet. The damp, clinging humiliation of the diner was a distant memory. This was my element. Diana, I ordered, not looking up from the screen. I want him frozen. He thought he was clever, cleaning out the joint account. I want his personal accounts, his new Cygnus signing bonus, his credit lines, everything. He will trace it back to us, Diana noted, already typing. No, he will not. It cannot come from Ethelgard. Route the freeze through our shell corporation in the Cayman Islands. The flag for the banks will be suspicious financial activity and potential structuring. He will be buried in compliance paperwork by 4 a.m. He will not be able to buy coffee in the morning. Done, she said, without ceremony. Eris was watching, a small, satisfied look on his face. The team is already digging, he said. He is not just greedy, Maya. He is sloppy. As if on cue, a technician in the corner spoke up, his voice respectful. Ma'am, Mr. Thorne, I'm in. I'm through his firewalls. He used the same password for his bank and his private email. The technician paused. Wow. Okay. He's not just sloppy. He's desperate. I am seeing massive markers. He has been hiding significant debt. Where? I asked. Vegas. Looks like a string of bad bets over the last 6 months. He's in the hole for at least $500,000. It all snapped into focus. The desperation, the sudden need to liquidate me, his useless wife. He did not just want a new life. He needed a massive influx of cash to save his own skin. Stealing from Ethelgard was not just ambition. It was a lifeline. While my world was being reassembled in a fortress of glass, Julian's was descending into a drunken farce. Across town, in the luxury apartment he thought was his, the one I had selected, scouted, and secured using a blind trust funded by Eris Thorne, the party was in full swing. I could picture it perfectly. Julian would be pacing the imported rug, holding a glass of champagne, basking in the glow of his own perceived genius. Simone, draped over the sofa, her shoes kicked off, and Brenda, his mother. You are a true genius. Julian, my brilliant, brilliant boy. Brenda's voice, which I always found a half-octave too sharp, would be ringing through the room. I told you she was useless. Finally, you finally got rid of that dead weight. This apartment, it is finally all ours. No more of her drab little touches. To us, baby. Simone would coo, raising her glass. To the new vice president, and to me for making it happen. To getting everything we deserve, Julian would say, his chest puffed out, just before he took a long, arrogant drink. And right on cue, as Diana had scheduled it, his phone would buzz. Not a text, a bank alert. "What is it?" Simone would ask, annoyed at the interruption. He would look at the screen, his face pale. "It's nothing. It says the account is frozen." "What?" Brenda would shriek. "What does that mean?" "It is a glitch," Julian would snap, already defensive. "It has to be a system error. I just transferred a lot of money." "The bank's system is probably just confused. I will call them in the morning and yell at some idiot." "You better," Simone would say, her voice losing some of its warmth. "Do not worry. It does not matter. As soon as we deliver Chimera to Cygnus tomorrow, we will be paid millions. This stupid bank account will be pocket change." She would lean back, satisfied, but in the command center, we were seeing the bigger picture. "Maya," Diana said, her voice tight with a new discovery. "What is it?" "Simone. She is not just his mistress. Our intel shows Cygnus Solutions placed her in his department 6 months ago. She was not a colleague. She was a handler. She was assigned to recruit him. So Julian was not even the architect of his own betrayal. He was just a tool, a pawn." "It gets better," Diana said, a rare, thin smile touching her lips. "She is playing her own game. She is double-crossing him, and she is double-crossing Cygnus." She turned the screen to face me. On it was a series of encrypted messages, sent from a private, untraceable email to a server in Shanghai. "She is planning to sell Project Chimera the data she thinks is real to a third-party competitor," Diana explained. "She has a meeting set for 3 days from now. Her plan was to let Julian and Cygnus take the fall for the initial theft, while she walked away with her own private payday. Julian was not the mastermind. He was not even the pawn. He was the bait. And he had no idea the woman celebrating with him was the one holding the hook. Julian and Simone walked into the glass and steel lobby of Cygnus Solutions at 8 a.m., attempting to project the confidence of conquering heroes. Inside, they were both vibrating with a toxic mix of adrenaline and pure panic. His frantic pre-dawn calls to the bank had been a nightmare. He had been routed through automated menus, put on hold, and finally told by a terse compliance officer that his assets were frozen pending an investigation into irregular activities. But in the Cygnus lobby, they were gods. A vice president met them at the security gates with a wide, insincere smile. "Here they are, the game changers. We are so glad to have you. The board is assembling for 10 a.m. We have a temporary suite for you to prepare." They were shown to a sleek, empty office. The moment the door closed, the performance dropped. "What do we do?" Julian hissed, yanking at his tie. "I cannot even buy a coffee, let alone—" "Shut up," Simone snapped. "All business." She was already plugging a military-grade secure USB drive into the new workstation. "None of that matters. This is all that matters. As soon as they see this, they will give us new accounts, new credit lines, new everything. This file is worth millions." She clicked the drive. She double-clicked the file labeled Project Chimera Final. A loading icon spun. Then, a small, red window popped up. "File error data corrupted." A cold, sick dread washed over the room. "What is that?" Julian asked, his voice barely a whisper. "It is nothing," Simone said, her own voice too high. She ejected the drive and slammed it back into the port. It is a compatibility issue." She tried again. "File error data corrupted." "This was your job," Julian yelled, the panic turning to rage. "You were the one who copied it." "It was fine last night," she shrieked back, her eyes wide with terror. "You must have done something Julian's phone buzzed in his pocket. A Las Vegas area code. He ignored it, pacing. It buzzed again, insistent. He finally ripped it from his pocket and answered. "What?" The voice on the other end was quiet, calm, and utterly terrifying. "Mr. Julian, a pleasure to finally reach you. We saw the news about your promotion. Cygnus Solutions. Very impressive. You cannot call me here, Julian whispered. Oh, we can, Julian. And we will. We are happy to come congratulate you in person. We are very interested in your new company's security policies. You have 24 hours to get us our $500,000, or we introduce ourselves to your new employers. The line clicked. He was hyperventilating, staring at the phone, when it rang again. This time, the screen read, Mother. He answered, desperate for a problem he thought he could handle. He was wrong. Julian. The shriek was so loud he yanked the phone from his ear. They are here. They are throwing me out, Julian. There are men in suits at the door. Mom, what are you talking about? Slow down. They have a paper, an eviction notice. It says the Thorn Trust has terminated the lease. What is a Thorn Trust? You told me you bought this apartment. You lied to me. The Thorn Trust. The words hit him like a physical blow. He looked around at the sterile Cygnus office, at Simone, who was now just hitting the refresh button over and over, the frozen accounts, the creditors who suddenly knew his new place of employment, the apartment, owned by a trust with his wife's boss's name on it. This was not a series of coincidences. This was an attack. This was her. He shoved past Simone, ignoring her protests. He ran from the office, down to the ATM in the main lobby. He needed cash. He needed proof. He jammed his primary debit card into the slot. Transaction denied. He tried his new Cygnus corporate card. Card hold. Please contact your issuer. He tried his last personal Visa. Transaction denied. He was broke. He was trapped. He stumbled out of the revolving doors onto the windy Chicago sidewalk, his carefully constructed world collapsing in real time. He pulled out his phone and dialed the only number he had left. My number. My civilian phone. It went directly to voicemail. Maya. He screamed into the receiver, drawing stares from people passing by. I know you are doing this. This is not funny. You are being a child. Maya. Whatever stupid, petty game you are playing, you stop it. You unlock my accounts. That is my money. You fix this right now, or you will be sorry. You cannot? The voicemail timer beeped, cutting him off. In the glass fortress, 50 stories above the city, the sun was just starting to rise. I watched the recording of Julian's message play out on the central screen. I took a sip of hot jasmine tea. When the message ended, I pressed delete. I turned to Diana. She had not slept, but she looked sharper than ever. He is unraveling, I said. He is. Diana agreed. But he is more dangerous than we thought. He is not just greedy. Maya. He is malignant. She turned her monitor toward me. It was not a bank record. It was an Ethelgard server log showing a failed firewall breach from the previous night. He did not just steal Chimera, Diana said, her voice dropping to a deadly quiet. While he was cleaning out your apartment, he used his remote credentials to try and access the internal medical database. It took me a second to understand. What? He was searching for one file, Diana said, highlighting the query string. Eris Thorn. My blood ran cold. Eris. His rare autoimmune condition, the reason for his seclusion, was the single most protected secret in our entire organization. It was our only true vulnerability. He was not just stealing for money, I whispered, the full sickening scope of his betrayal finally clear. He was looking for blackmail. Diana closed the file. The professional calm was gone, replaced by a cold, personal fury. He just crossed a line. This is no longer industrial espionage or a messy divorce. This is a direct personal attack on Mr. Thorn. She looked at me, her eyes like polished steel. The game is over. We end this now. At 9:50 a.m., just 10 minutes before Julian and Simone were scheduled to present their corrupted file to the board, I made my move. Diana Vane had made a single call, not as a lawyer, but as the voice of Eris Thorn. The request was simple and non-negotiable. A senior representative from Ethelgard Dynamics will meet with CEO Marcus Vance. Now. It is a matter of urgent and mutual security. Marcus Vance's office was on the top floor of the Cygnus Tower, a monument to his own ego. It was vast, filled with chrome and dark wood, and overlooking the Chicago River. He was a man in his late 50s, with a predatory tan and a watch worth more than the BMW Julian was so proud of. He did not get up when Diana and I were shown in. He sat behind his enormous desk, steepling his fingers, the picture of insulated power. He had allowed his vice president of security to stand in the corner. "Ms. Vane?" He greeted Diana, ignoring me entirely. And, "This is Maya," Diana said, her voice like ice. "She is the senior representative. You will be speaking with her." Marcus Vance looked at me, a woman he would have dismissed as a secretary, and a condescending smile touched his lips. He clearly thought I was some low-level employee sent to be sacrificed. "Well, Maya," he said, leaning back, "I am a very busy man. Your company has been trying to poach my new vice president, Julian, for months. Now, he and his associate have come to us, bringing significant assets. So, are you here to discuss the terms of our acquisition of Project Chimera? Ethelgard must be desperate to be sending you." The arrogance in the room was suffocating. He thought he held all the cards. He thought he was the predator. I did not sit. I walked to the center of his expensive rug and placed the slim black tablet I had been carrying on his desk. I did not slide it. I placed it. "You do not have Chimera, Mr. Vance," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through his arrogance like a diamond. "You have a virus that I created." His smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of irritation. "I do not know what kind of game you are playing." "This is not a game," I interrupted. "Your two new assets are amateurs. They were foolish enough to steal a honeypot, a Trojan horse. The file they are currently trying and failing to open is a logic bomb. The moment they present it to your board, it will activate. It will not just destroy your server. It will become your server. Every email, every bank transfer, every keystroke in your entire company will be mirrored directly to us for the next 6 months." His tan seemed to get a shade lighter. The head of security took a half step forward. "He is lying," Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. I tapped the tablet. A 3-dimensional molecular model began to rotate on the screen. It was complex, elegant, and beautiful. "This," I said, "is 2% of the real Project Chimera. Just a small glimpse, so you understand what you tried to steal, and what you failed to get." Marcus stared at the screen, his eyes widening. He was smart enough to recognize genius when he saw it, even if it was not his own. He knew, in that instant, that he had been played. He knew the data in his building was fake. "Those two," he whispered, his voice turning venomous. "Those two idiots are amateurs." I finished for him, my voice matching his for coldness. "Julian is a desperate, indebted fool, and Simone is not even on your side." I tapped the screen again. The rotating molecule was replaced by a series of encrypted messages. "Your new star recruit, Simone, is also betraying you. She has been in contact with your competitors in Shanghai. She was planning to sell them the Chimera data, the fake data. Mind you, as soon as she collected her signing bonus from you. She was going to let you and Julian take the fall for the international incident while she disappeared with 2 paydays. I slid the tablet across the desk. There are the translated messages, and there are her bank records from the Cayman Islands. He read it. His face went from pale to a deep, mottled red. The fury of a man who prided himself on his own brilliance, only to be deceived by a junior-level associate, was a terrible thing to see. He did not yell. He became very, very still. "What?" he said, the word a piece of ice. "Do you want?" This was the moment. The power had shifted completely. "Here is the deal," I said. "You are a CEO. You hate being embarrassed. So am I. I hate being stolen from." I leaned in, just slightly. Your 10 o'clock board meeting is still going to happen. You are going to gather your investors. You are going to let Julian and Simone walk to that podium. You are going to let them plug in that USB drive. And you are going to let them present their groundbreaking data. You want me to let them set off a virus in my own system? He asked, incredulous. I have already given your head of security a kill switch, I said, nodding to the man in the corner, who now looked at me with a newfound terrified respect. The virus will be contained, but it will be public. They will humiliate themselves in front of your entire board. They will expose themselves as frauds and as spies. And what do I get out of this? Marcus asked, his eyes narrow. You get a story, I said. You get to be the CEO who, in cooperation with Ethelgard, rooted out corporate spies. You save your company from a disastrous acquisition. Your board sees you as strong and decisive. And Ethelgard will not sue Cygnus Solutions into bankruptcy for attempted industrial espionage, conspiracy, and wire fraud. I stood up straight. We do not care about Cygnus, Mr. Vance. We just want them. You give them to us, and we walk away. Marcus Vance looked at the proof of Simone's betrayal. He looked at the glimpse of the real chimera. He looked at me. He did not hesitate. He loathed his competition, but he absolutely despised being made a fool of. Set it up, he said to his head of security. Get the board in that room, give them front row seats, and get me our legal team. He looked at me, a shark recognizing another shark. They are all yours. The Cygnus Solutions boardroom was a theater of power, and it was packed. The long, polished mahogany table, so reflective it looked wet, was surrounded by the entire board of directors. More importantly, the key investors were present, seated in expensive leather chairs along the walls, old money sharks who had been promised a feeding frenzy. Diana and I watched from a small, darkened observation room adjoining the main hall. A one-way mirror gave us a perfect, unobstructed view of the stage. At precisely 10 o'clock, Marcus Vance stood at the head of the table. His face was a perfect mask of corporate leadership. He projected calm, but I could see the minute tension in his jaw, the only sign he was deviating from his own script. Good morning, everyone, Marcus began, his voice smooth and confident, resonating with practiced authority. We are gathered today on the cusp of a major breakthrough. I have brought on 2 new, exceptional talents who have managed to secure a project that will not just change our market share, it will define our future. He gestured toward the side door, a small, cruel smile playing on his lips. Please welcome Julian Hayes and Simone Dubois. The door opened, and the 2 of them walked in. They looked dreadful. Julian's face was a pale, sweaty gray, his eyes darting around the room, wide and manic. He had clearly not slept, and the combined pressure of his creditors, his mother's eviction, and the frozen accounts had left him visibly crumbling. Simone was attempting to project confidence, but her hands were trembling so badly she could barely hold the slim laptop and the USB drive. Julian, Simone, Marcus said, his voice laced with an irony that only Diana and I could detect. We are all eager. The floor is yours. Julian shuffled to the podium, fumbling to connect the laptop. He looked physically ill. Simone moved to insert the drive, her movements jerky and uncoordinated. Thank you, Mr. Vance, Julian stammered, looking at the formidable, stone-faced audience of investors. We are incredibly excited to show you Project Chimera. He clicked. The main projector screen, a massive, wall-sized display, lit up, bathing the room in white light. For one agonizing second, nothing happened, just a blue desktop background. A confused, angry murmur began to ripple through the investors. It is loading, Simone whispered, loud enough for the first row to hear. She clicked again, her breath held, and then the screen filled. It was not a complex molecular model. It was not a data spreadsheet. It was a cartoon, a crudely drawn, brightly colored cartoon of a cat chasing a red laser pointer. A jaunty, looping piece of cheap, tinny music began to play from the boardroom speakers. "What is this?" one of the board members demanded, his voice sharp. "Vance, what is this joke?" Julian's face went from pale to sheet white. He began hitting the escape key frantically. "No, this is just a glitch. It is the wrong file. It is—" "Stop clicking," Simone hissed, shoving him aside. She grabbed the mouse, her face a mask of pure terror, and tried to open the file again. The cartoon cat suddenly stopped. It turned, as if to look directly at the audience. The jaunty music cut to a harsh, buzzing silence. The screen flickered once, then flashed a deep, bloody red, huge, black. Block letters appeared, filling the screen. One word at a time. "Stolen asset. Property of Ethelgard Dynamics. Purge protocol initiated." A klaxon-like alarm blared from the speakers, and then, one by one, the laptops and tablets on the conference table in front of the board members and investors went dark. Their screens blinked off with a parasitic thud. The room's overhead lighting system shut down, plunging the hall into the dim, red glow of the emergency-only lighting. My virus, the Chimera payload, had just announced its presence. Panic erupted. "It was you!" Simone screamed, her polished mask shattering into 1,000 pieces. She turned on Julian, her nails out, literally attacking him at the podium. "You did this. You ruined it. You must have corrupted the file. Me!" Julian shrieked, shoving her back so hard she stumbled. "You were the one who copied it. This is all your fault. You lying coward." "Turn it off," Marcus Vance roared. The head of security, standing by the wall, hit the physical kill switch to the room's network, just as we had instructed. The red screen vanished. The alarm stopped. The room was left in a stunned, heavy silence, broken only by the sound of Julian and Simone breathing heavily, staring at each other with pure, unadulterated hatred. That was our cue. The main doors at the back of the boardroom swung open with a pneumatic hiss. 2 large, uniformed Cygnus security guards entered first, taking up positions on either side of the entrance. Then Diana Vane entered, her heels clicking decisively on the marble floor. And then I walked in, following her. I was no longer the damp, humiliated woman in the diner. I was wearing a steel gray, custom-tailored suit. I stopped halfway to the table, letting the silence stretch, letting every eye in the room fall on me. Julian's head snapped up. He saw me. His entire body went rigid, as if he had been electrocuted. He looked at me, then at Diana, then at the dead screens. The tiny, rat-like gears in his brain were turning, finally understanding the scale of his mistake. "Hello, Julian," I said. My voice was calm, measured, and it carried perfectly in the tomb-quiet room. That was a terrible presentation. Julian opened his mouth, but only a strangled, pathetic gulp came out. Marcus Vance stood up, theatrically brushing his suit jacket down as if to wipe off the filth of the past 10 minutes. He looked at me, then at the investors. "Thank you, Maya," he said, his voice booming with reclaimed authority. "Security, arrest them." The 2 Cygnus guards moved forward, grabbing Julian and Simone by the arms. "What?" Simone yelled, struggling. "You cannot. We work for you, Marcus." Marcus ignored her, turning to his stunned board. "My apologies, ladies and gentlemen. It appears Cygnus was the target of a sophisticated industrial espionage attempt. These 2 amateurs attempted to infiltrate our company and sell us stolen, corrupted data." He gave a small, appreciative nod toward me. "Thankfully, with the full cooperation of Ethelgard Dynamics, we were able to identify these 2 spies before they could do any real damage. The situation is contained." He looked at the guards, his voice turning to ice. "Get them out of my sight." We did not wait to watch them being led away in cuffs. The performance was over, and the theater was closing. As Diana and I stepped out of the Cygnus Tower, the sharp 10 a.m. sunlight felt clinical. We settled into the back of the black Audi, the doors sealing us in, a capsule of silence moving through the noisy city. "It is done," Diana said, her voice holding the barest trace of professional satisfaction. "Not quite," I replied. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out the secure Ethelgard tablet. "There is one more piece of trash to take out." I opened a secure application, one that was not on any official Ethelgard server. It was a private, encrypted stream linked to a series of micro cameras I had installed in the apartment's main rooms years ago. I had told Julian they were high-end smoke detectors. He never looked closely. The feed crackled to life. The audio was crystal clear. On the screen, Brenda Hayes was sitting on my sofa, her feet propped up on my coffee table. She was wearing a gaudy leopard print housecoat and holding her phone in one hand and my grandmother's porcelain vase in the other. "It is vintage, yes," Brenda was saying, her voice grating. "Barely used. The stupid girl had good taste. I will give her that. I can do, let's say, $200 cash only. Dear." She was selling my belongings. She was auctioning off the last pieces of my old life, my grandmother's life, for pocket change. A sharp knock echoed through the apartment's speakers. Brenda sighed, annoyed. "Hold on," she snapped into the phone. "Ugh, the pizza is finally here. I have been waiting 30 minutes. She put the vase down and lumbered to the door, pulling her housecoat tighter. She peered through the peephole, then unlocked the door. It was not a pizza delivery boy. It was two men, tall and impassive, in dark, perfectly fitted suits. Behind them stood a uniformed sheriff's deputy. They were the enforcement team Diana had arranged. "Brenda Hayes," the first man asked. His voice was polite, but dead. "Who are you? I did not order." The man held up a badge and a thick sheaf of papers. "We are not here for a discussion. We are representatives of the property's managing trust. You have 10 minutes to collect your personal items. This property is being reclaimed." Brenda's face went through a rapid, ugly series of emotions: confusion, indignation, and finally, rage. "You have got to be kidding me." "Reclaimed my son, Julian Hayes. He owns this apartment." "That is incorrect, ma'am," the officer said, stepping forward, his voice calm and firm. He pointed to the legal order. "This apartment is, and always has been, the property of the Thorn Trust. Mr. Julian Hayes was a tenant on a month-to-month lease. That lease was terminated for breach of contract, effective 1 hour ago. Breach what breach? He pays his rent. The terms of the lease forbade any criminal or fraudulent activity. He is currently being detained for industrial espionage," the man in the suit said flatly. Brenda's face crumpled. "You are lying. Julian would... He would never. I am calling him right now." We watched on the tablet as she frantically dialed. She held the phone to her ear. She waited. Her face grew paler. It is going to voicemail," she whispered. She tried again. "Voicemail. He is not answering." "He is a little busy," I whispered back at the screen. Julian's phone was, at that exact moment, sitting in an evidence bag at Cygnus Security. "Mrs. Hayes," the officer said, "your 10 minutes are up. You must vacate the premises. Now." "No," she shrieked, and the chaos began. She grabbed the porcelain vase she had just tried to sell. "Get out! Get out of my son's house!" She hurled it. The men did not flinch. The vase shattered against the wall, inches from the first man's head. That was all they needed. "You are trespassing," the officer said. They moved fast. She screamed and flailed, a crude, pathetic spectacle of entitlement denied. She tried to grab a lamp, but they had her arms. She was dragged, kicking and howling, through the entryway. She was not allowed to grab her shoes. She was not allowed to grab her coat. The feed switched to the hallway camera as she was hauled out of the elevator and into the main lobby. The lobby was pristine, all marble and chrome, and it was now filled with her raw, animalistic screams. "You cannot do this to me. My son will hear about this. He will sue you, you bastards." The doorman, who had always hated her, watched with a neutral expression as the automatic glass doors slid shut behind her, leaving her on the cold, concrete sidewalk in her housecoat and slippers, clutching nothing but her cheap, oversized handbag. The feed went black as the enforcement team cut the power to the apartment. I closed the application. I looked out the window of the Audi. The city was just having lunch, unaware. "Are you all right?" Diana asked, watching me. I straightened the cuff of my suit jacket. I felt nothing. No, that was not true. I felt balanced. The scales had been reset. "Perfectly, Diana," I said. "Now, let's go collect my husband." The room was in the sub-basement of the Cygnus Tower. It was not a jail cell, not yet, but it was designed to make people feel like prisoners. It was windowless, painted a dull, industrial gray, and smelled of cold concrete and stale air. Julian and Simone had been left in there for 2 hours, long enough for the adrenaline to wear off and the cold, stark terror to set in. Julian was pacing, his hair matted with sweat, his face pale. Simone was sitting on a hard plastic chair, her arms wrapped around herself, trembling. The heavy magnetic lock buzzed, a harsh, invasive sound, and the steel door swung open. Diana Vane entered first, her leather folio held at her side. She looked as if she were walking into a sterile lab, not a holding room. She stood in the center of the room, her presence sucking the air out. "The federal agents we contacted are in the lobby," Diana stated. "No preamble. You have exactly 2 options. Option 1, we let them up. You will both be charged with industrial espionage, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and, thanks to Mr. Hayes, attempted access of protected private medical information. Given the digital evidence, Ethelgard will recommend the maximum sentence. That is 20 years, minimum." A small, strangled sound escaped Simone. Her eyes were wide, fixed on Diana. What is option 2? She whispered. The door, which had not closed, opened wider. I walked in. If Julian had seen a ghost, his reaction would have been less visceral. He recoiled, hitting his back against the wall, his eyes stretching wide. He was not looking at the woman he had married. He was looking at the woman who had just dismantled his entire existence. I said nothing. I walked to the small metal table in the center of the room, the one Julian had been avoiding. I placed a thick, heavy stack of documents on its surface. The thud of the paper was the only sound. It was twice as thick as the pathetic stack he had given me in the diner. "Option 2, I said, my voice cutting through the silence. "Is you sign these? Every page?" I tapped the top document. "So this is a full, legally binding confession. You will detail the entire conspiracy, from Simone's recruitment of Julian, to the theft of the Chimera file, to the coordinated plan to frame me as the scapegoat. And you, Julian, will include a special addendum about your attempt to access Eris Thorne's personal files." I moved my hand to the next document. "This is a civil agreement, a full restitution for damages. It cedes 100% of all your assets, current and future, to Ethelgard, your bank accounts, your stock options, your bonuses. If you ever make $1 again, it is ours until the debt is paid." Finally, I pulled one last file from the stack and slid it directly in front of Julian. "And this," I said, meeting his terrified gaze, "is our divorce, the real one. It states you waive any and all claims. You get nothing. You contest nothing. You sign. You disappear." He stared at the papers. His breathing was shallow, rapid. Then his face, the arrogant, cruel face I knew so well, crumpled. It dissolved into the most pathetic, grotesque mask of desperation I had ever seen. He lunged forward, falling to his knees in front of me. "Maya," he sobbed, reaching for my suit. I stepped back, repulsed. Maya, baby, please, please, you do not understand. I love you. I always loved you. It was her. He turned, still on his knees, and pointed a shaking, accusatory finger at Simone. She did this. She set me up. She told me you were she's a corporate spy, Maya. She forced me she planned all of it. Tell them it was her. I was just trying to get away from her. A low, guttural growl tore from Simone's throat. You coward! She shrieked, launching herself from the chair. She flew at him, her hands like claws, raking her nails down his face. You pathetic, worthless, lying coward. Julian screamed and scrambled backward, crashing against the table, 4 bright red lines blooming on his cheek. You told me she was nobody! Simone was screaming, her face purple with rage, tears of fury streaming. You told me she was weak. You told me she was just some stupid assistant. You said you told me she would beg you back. The room fell silent, the echo of her words hanging in the air. He said that, I asked, my voice dangerously calm. He said I would beg him back. Julian had frozen, blood trickling down his neck. It is funny, I said. You were always so careless, Julian, so loud. I reached into my suit pocket. I did not pull out a gun. I pulled out a small digital audio recorder. I held it up. You always thought I was taking a bath or asleep. You never bothered to whisper. I pressed the play button. His voice filled the small gray room. Not the pleading, sobbing wreck on the floor, but the voice of the man from the diner, confident, smug, cruel. It was a recording of him, on the phone with Simone, just 4 nights ago. His voice said, she is too stupid and weak to do anything. She is just an assistant. What is she going to do? She is nothing without me. Trust me, baby. By next week she will be on her knees, begging me for rent money, and I am going to enjoy watching her cry. I pressed stop. The silence that followed was absolute. Simone stared at Julian, her expression one of pure, horrified disgust. Julian did not move. He just deflated. All the air, all the arrogance, all the false power that had defined him rushed out, leaving nothing behind. He made a small, choking sound, a dying animal's gasp, and he folded in on himself. He slumped from the table onto the concrete floor, curling into a fetal position, his hands covering his head, and began to sob. It was not a cry. It was the sound of a hollow man finally caving in. He was, at last, completely and utterly broken. Julian, still a crumpled, sobbing heap on the floor, slowly lifted his head. His face was a disgusting mess of tears, mucus, and the 4 bright red scratches from Simone's fingernails. He looked at the thick stack of papers on the table, then at me. His eyes were not just terrified, they were empty, hollow, begging. He was searching for a flicker of the woman he thought he knew, the weak wife he could manipulate. He was looking for mercy. I offered nothing. I glanced at my watch, a simple, elegant steel timepiece. Your time is running out. The federal agents are in the lobby. Diana called them 15 minutes ago. They are getting impatient. Diana Vane stepped forward, her shadow falling over him. She picked up a single, heavy black fountain pen from her folio and placed it on the table, precisely in the center. The click it made against the metal was the loudest sound in the room. You know, Julian, Diana said, her voice almost conversational. You said to your mistress that your wife would beg you back. She paused, then gestured in the general direction of the diner that now seemed a lifetime away. Those papers you served her, that pathetic, uncontested divorce, utterly worthless. An amateurish attempt by a small-time lawyer who clearly does not understand who his client was married to. She pushed the thick stack of confessions and the new divorce petition toward him. These papers, however, these are ironclad. They have been signed and authorized by your wife's former boss's legal counsel." She tapped her own chest. "Me." Diana pointed up at a small, black-domed security camera in the corner of the ceiling, a device Julian and Simone had been too panicked to even notice. "And they are being actively witnessed by your new boss. Mr. Vance has been enjoying this performance from his observation room." I looked down at the broken man on the floor. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. "Sign it." It was not a decision. It was a reflex. Julian scrambled forward on his knees, not even bothering to stand. He grabbed the pen, his hand shaking so violently he could barely hold it. A glob of tears and snot dripped from his face onto the first page. He wiped it away, smearing the ink, and began to sign, his signature a frantic, desperate, illegible scrawl. He signed the confession, admitting to everything. He signed the restitution agreement, giving away 100% of a future he would now never have. He signed the divorce papers, erasing himself from my life, page by page. He pushed the stack away, his hand covered in ink. Simone, who had been watching with the dead, hollow eyes of someone who has accepted their own doom, crawled forward and signed her name on the confession pages as well. She did not even bother to read what she was signing. Diana calmly, methodically, reviewed every single signature. "They are valid." She nodded to the door. The two Cygnus security guards re-entered. They did not speak. They hauled Julian and Simone to their feet. "Wait!" Julian cried, one last pathetic plea as they dragged him toward the door. "Maya, where? Where am I supposed to go?" "You will be processed," Diana said. "You are being handed over." The guards dragged them out of the room, toward the elevator that would take them up to the lobby and the waiting federal agents. As the heavy steel door was closing, Julian had one last, desperate look back into the hallway. He saw Marcus Vance step out of an adjacent observation room. Vance was not looking at him. He was walking directly toward me, his hand outstretched. "Thank you for your efficient cooperation, Ms. Sterling," Julian heard Marcus say, his voice full of professional respect. The door clicked shut, but in that final, dark second, Julian's slow, panicked brain processed the name. Sterling, not Hayes, not my maiden name. A name he had never, ever heard. He realized, far too late, that he had not just been married to a woman named Maya. He had been married to a cover, a ghost. He never knew me. He never knew me at all. Diana Vane gathered the signed documents, her movements neat and precise, and placed them in her folio. "It is done," she said. "Eris Thorne will be very pleased. The chimera trap worked perfectly." I turned away from the room, walking out into the corridor, which led to a private elevator. We rode it up to the top floor. I walked to the vast floor-to-ceiling windows in Marcus Vance's empty office, looking down at the Chicago streets, at the tiny cars and tiny people going about their day. I did not feel joy. I did not feel triumphant. I felt balanced. A project had been completed. A very, very dirty file had been closed. "Let's go, Diana," I said, adjusting the collar of my suit jacket. "We have an empire to run. Thank you for listening to my story." I would love to connect with all of you. Comment below and let me know where you are listening from, and share your thoughts on Julian's takedown. Please subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, and if you enjoyed this, like the video and hit that hype button. It really helps this story get heard by more people who need to hear it.